Open world games have an undeniable effect on the gaming industry as a whole, and I believe that open world games are single handedly some of the best games out there. Showing a kind of gameplay design first philosophy with little assistance can still be a massive success. And with the somewhat recent release of Elden Ring and its huge success, it got me thinking about older open world games such like Skyrim and Fallout 4 and Shadow of the Colossus and stuff like that, and it made me want to make a video about open world games as a whole and how giving the player the freedom to do whatever they want, whenever they want, even when the greater story is at risk, is a great idea and has a great payoff and can be one of the most memorable games to ever exist. Now with that out of the way, let's start our journey here with the newest game on this list being Elden Ring. Elden Ring was made by the phenomenal company of From Software, with their great lead of the team being Hidetaka Miyazaki, and is a great example of an epic fantasy game where the player, the Tarnished, is on a journey to restore the Elden Ring and bring balance to the lands between. While playing this game, there's a main route to take that is kind of implied so it can fit the story better, but it's not necessary to use that main route in order to beat the game even. So what exactly do I mean by that? Well, to give an example, let's say your first main boss that is implied for the story should be Margit the Fell Omen, the protector of the Erdtree, and then after that you proceed into Godrick's castle and you fight Godrick the Grafted, who is a fallen king trying to impress his forefathers. But the funny thing is you don't have to fight either of them. And while I recommend it because it's a great way to learn the game and a great way to get some levels early on, and also to get the great rune in the game being Godrick's, it's not needed because you can just take a side route on the right side of the castle and skip the entire section and go straight to Leonaria of the Lakes and go straight to Rennala. Now, while you can skip these two bosses, and you can skip a multitude of other bosses as well, there is a certain amount of bosses that you do need to beat, but the thing I like about that is because it's just a number of bosses you need to beat. And some certain bosses are required, of course, but the rest are just kind of up to the player's interpretation of who they would want to fight at that time, giving the player the freedom to choose what boss they want to kill and which ones they want to let live to further the story. Now, the design choice of allowing the player to choose what bosses they fight is a huge decision to make, but I believe that it has a giant payoff for the player, letting them feel like it's kind of their own story, and not the character's story that you're playing like other games. And with Elden Ring being a newer game to the open world genre, they were fortunate enough to be able to look at the old open world games from the past for inspiration and to learn of the criticisms of those games and be able to avoid those mistakes, and also still being able to make it unique. From Software is an absolutely brilliant gaming company whose game design is clearly top tier in my opinion, but when they set out to make an open world game, they did look at other games for influence and inspiration so they can avoid those mistakes from other games like that. But Miyazaki is a man who likes to take risks and add his own personal flair to those games, because he's a very passionate person about the story he wants to tell and the world that he wants to build within the game. He really wants to immerse you in the world of Elden Ring, and I think that's a great mentality to have while creating a game. Now, I'm a huge Souls nerd. I love Dark Souls games. I love Bloodborne, that one being my favorite. I've played Sekiro, Elden Ring, I've platinumed it, and I love the games as a whole. And I remember when this first came out, seeing all the bosses and in the trailer and freaking out and being super happy, wanting to play this game. And that's another component that I want to talk about in this, is boss design. If From Software, in my opinion, is known for anything, it's either their difficulty or their bosses, and Elden Ring is no exception to that. The bosses of Elden Ring are amazing, and there's a whopping 238 bosses in the game, with only about 13 of those bosses being mandatory and the rest of them being fun side bosses or like mini bosses. Now, although a lot of these side bosses or mini bosses are just kind of stronger or weaker variants of each other, the main bosses, or the rune bearers as they're called in game, are the most memorable in my opinion, because usually these bosses are very unique and have no duplicate of them whatsoever. There's one exception, maybe maybe that being of Mog, because there's 2 Mogs, one at the bottom of the Leyndell sewer system, and then one in Mogwyn Dynasty, which is the real Mog, but I'm not here to go over the lore. But most likely, these unique main bosses you're going to come across through the main story progression, besides some of them like Malenia, which you need to do a lot of stuff and puzzles and find a lot of stuff to get to in order to get to her secret area where she resides. So the first main boss I kind of want to talk about in this is a pretty early on boss, which that is being Rennala, Queen of the Full Moon. And the first time you fight this boss, she kind of feels like a pushover. She feels like she's pretty easy, and it's kind of a gimmick of going around trying to break the shields on the students that surround her and then getting at Rennala. And after that, her bubble will break, you can come down, attack her, get a couple hits in, and then rinse and repeat the cycle. And she got a very low health bar in her first phase, so it's super easy to kind of just wail on her and get her down pretty easy in a couple goes. But then it'll trick you by after defeating that first phase, you'll get a cutscene, and it'll lead into her second phase, which is arguably way better. And she kind of tricks you into a false sense of comfort, showing you that in her first phase she's super weak, and so it should be a pushover in the second phase. And then, but if you know Souls, second phase is always way worse usually than the first phase, besides a couple exceptions being like Ludwig from Bloodborne. But she then is her true self in her second phase, using spells to fight and all sorts of magic, and she even starts to use summons just like the player can to protect herself. And she can summon up to 4 things, that being like a dragon, a troll, some wolves, or a bloodhound knight, which is absolutely insane. And I'm not sure how many it is now, I haven't played in a bit, but I think she can only have up to 2 summons summoned at a time. I don't know if she can go more than 2, but even then 2 summons and Rennala against you is pretty difficult. But it's still balanced and fair to a degree depending on what she summons, and maybe you can kill her even fast enough before she does summon. But she's a very unique boss and one of my favorites, but she is only rival to that of one of my favorite boss designs in all of Souls, being that of Radahn. Now, I want to start off with a little side note. I don't know if any of you were able to, who might be viewing, got to fight pre-nerf Radahn, but I did upon his release. And just a little side note I wanted to talk about is that pre-nerf Radahn, honest to God, in my opinion, was one of the hardest bosses I ever fucking fought. I don't know if any of you guys had trouble with him, but I for sure did. Anyways, with that little tangent out of the way, the Radahn fight starts out with a great little kind of intro to it when you walk into Redmane Castle and get told the story of Radahn and his past, and why fighting him is such a golden opportunity. I'll play the clip for you here right now.
Before we begin, allow me to paint you the full picture. General Radahn is cursed ever to wander. Eaten from the inside by Malenia's scarlet rot, his wits are long gone. Now he gathers the corpses of former friends and foes alike, gorging on them like a dog. Howling at the sky.
So thanks to that short synopsis from Witch Hunter Jaren, we can learn that General Radahn is being eaten away from the inside by Malenia's scarlet rot, which is absolutely brutal, and that his wits are now long gone, implying that he used to be quite a respectable and honored, but now he's fallen to a husk of what he once was, feasting on the Clean Rot Knights and former friends and foes, as he said. He's lost his sanity and has fallen from the grace that he used to hold. Now, although this is kind of a short synopsis that he gives us, it gives us a lot of insight on Radahn and what he used to be like, how he was a respected general, and how fighting him is a huge deal for the Tarnished that are in, Limgrave, Caelid, and the lands between as a whole. It's kind of similar to that of Radahn wants to die in battle honorably, kind of like similar like that of a Viking going to Valhalla, and that is shown quite fucking well in his boss fight. So the main aspect that I love about Radahn's boss fight is the insane amount of people that you can summon to help fight alongside this thundering demigod. And the aspect of being able to summon more than one person for a boss fight was huge news to the Souls community and the Souls genre as a whole. Because whereas usually in most other Souls games you would stick to going solo with an occasional summon, if you're lucky, every other boss maybe, Elden Ring disregarded that, got rid of the old ways, and decided to give you the ability to summon about a companion for just about every boss. Those companions usually consist of Spirit Ashes, which are just common enemies that you come across throughout the game, or there's the Puppets, which are NPCs that you can summon. Now, although the Radahn fight only lets you pick so many people who you can summon, it still lets you summon a staggering 8 people to help you fight this boss, which is insane for Souls, considering when you can usually only summon one companion for most of the other games that are in the Souls franchise. Allowing you to just jump ship and go straight to 8 summons per a boss fight is insane to me, and I love it. So enough of me yabbering on about the Souls games and all that. I want to look at another example, and it's an older example, but it's my main reason why I believe that no matter how old an open world game gets, they can still always hold up. And I believe a lot of people would agree with me on this sentiment, because the game we're going to be looking at is Skyrim, The Elder Scrolls. And it's a great game, and I love it, and I don't know much about the story of it, so forgive me, I've only played it once or twice, but I'm mainly here to focus on the gameplay aspect of Skyrim. So without further ado, let's get into Elder Scrolls.
You're finally awake.
What can I say about Skyrim that hasn't already been said before? I mean, it's one of the most well-known games out there, and it's well-known for, well, many things, such as the insane mods you can add, and the funny ragdoll physics, and how incredibly easy it is to steal and cheat the game's mechanics. But it is undeniably known for being one of the most iconic games out there. You can ask just about anybody you know, and they might know what Skyrim is. They probably will know what Skyrim is. I mean, the overall feel of the Elder Scrolls atmosphere is truly amazing. It's very immersing into the world that is Skyrim. It truly feels like you're in medieval fantasy era, with the knights and the mages and all the other fun NPCs and characters and quest lines that you get to go on. It does a great job at immersing you into the game, and I think that's a great thing to hope for in an open world game. A kind of escape where you feel like you're not in your own world, you don't have to worry about your own problems. You just get to focus on the game, be a medieval knight, and have fun. The game is infamous for its intro. I mean, I played it just a minute ago, but if you don't know the intro to Skyrim, I'll give a quick rundown, which is basically that you are a prisoner, you're about to be executed as you're wheeled into Helgen, but right before your head's about to get cut off, the dragon swoops down in and then destroys the town you're in, allowing you to escape from your execution. You then realize that you're Dragonborn, which is pretty much the chosen one, and that you must defeat the mighty and powerful Alduin, who is basically a dragon stronger than all dragons, like a leader of dragons in a way. And he's raining hell upon the people of Skyrim. So the logical thing to do would be, oh, let's go kill Alduin. And I understand that sentiment, but I feel so bad for any of the new players who don't explore the world or do any of the side quests and just focus on the main quest and trying to beat the game as fast as they can, because exploring the world of Skyrim is such a rich and amazing journey, and I'm sure no one's gonna forget it. I mean, I've never forgotten my first playthrough, and that's mainly what I want to talk about when I'm talking about Skyrim, is the exploration factor. It's truly amazing, and I love it. Now, I believe a good thing to keep in mind as a game developer is to reward the observant player, and I mean, Souls games do this pretty well, but Skyrim does it very well in my opinion. I'm not saying that Souls games does it bad, but I think Skyrim does it very well, with very rewarding quests and such. And I believe exploration is the key to Skyrim and having a fun playthrough. I mean, it provides a whole lot of new opportunities and stories to tell the player. I mean, I remember my first time doing Serena's quest and being able to turn into a vampire lord. It was super fun, and especially spamming the fucking grab button, like the vampiric grip ability, and then throwing enemies into the air. It's super fun, and I feel like people who have the sentiment of just rushing to beat the main story should maybe relax and explore the world more and see what it has to offer. There's honestly so much to do in Skyrim that you'll never do everything in your first playthrough. I can guarantee you that. And that's why it has such a great amount of replayability, and that's another thing I wanted to focus about, and when talking about open world games as a whole, is the factor of replayability. When you replay the game, does it change? Does it have a new experience for you? And I believe Skyrim does. It has a great amount of difference. And of course, there are some things that you have to do in the game, and those still are the same, and you have a better feel on the game now when you replay it for the first time. But it still has a sense of new wonders because you're finding things that you never found before in your first playthrough, such as like doing the quest to become a werewolf, or joining the Dark Brotherhood, and maybe becoming Thane in all the cities. You can do that, and you can also maybe join the Dawnguard, like the Vampire Slayers, and it's got a great amount of opportunity in the game. I love it so much that no matter how many times I'll play Skyrim, I will always have a different playthrough. And I know I said I've played the game like 2 or 3 times, and my builds in those though were starkly different every single time, and I did different quests every single time. I had a one-handed build where I was part of the Dark Brotherhood. I had a vampire build where I was a vampire lord with the Serena quest, and then I also did a pyromancy build when I was at the College of Winterhold. And one I haven't tried, but I know it's like famous within the Skyrim community, is the Stealth Archer, because it just kind of works no matter what. You can always be a Stealth Archer, but I'm keen on trying that, and I'll probably give it a go sometime soon. Anyways, back to the main point of Skyrim with their exploration. Exploring in Skyrim is always super fun no matter what, because you're always either, whether it be walking or taking a horse, you're constantly going to be running into things you didn't even know existed, and you feel like you're kind of in that sense of like you're a traveler, you found this for the first time, or maybe you're an adventurer who came across these old ruins that used to be for some bigger purpose, but now they're old and gone. And I love that Skyrim's atmosphere fits so well for the whole game, with all of the individual cities being so unique within that, such as Whiterun being your very bare bones, middle class kind of village and city. And then you go to places like Markarth, where it's very much rich, but there's also a lot of crime rate and stuff like that, whereas Winterhold is prided for its college. It's an academic town. And I love that it gives that kind of diversity within the game. It makes it feel like it is its own world, and we're simply just playing through the events that are happening, but it's great that it immerses you so well into this world. Another kind of way that it employs the feeling of you being an adventurer finding things is coming across the word walls, because as the Dragonborn, you get to learn dragon shouts. By killing a dragon, you'll get its soul, and you can come across a word wall and learn a shout, which is a special kind of power in the game that'll let you yell something, and then it's a special ability of some sort. It could be a fireball, or like a physical buff, or something of the sorts. But when you come across those word walls, they chant, you can hear the chanting of them, and you'll be drawn more towards them. And the whole dungeons that they're in, and everything you have to go through with old booby traps and all that stuff, and the Draugrs and the Draugr Deathlords and all that, it can get annoying from time to time, and I understand that, but all of the dungeons are usually really unique for most of the part, and it requires a great amount of like thinking to get through there, and it's kind of like a great big old puzzle, and I love it. I love solving puzzles within open world games because it makes me feel like I'm trying to find something that was locked away forever, and you're uncovering it for the first time in maybe a couple thousand or 100, I don't know how many years it could be, but you're uncovering something that's not supposed to be, and it gives you that sense of wonder how you came across this and nobody else tried to look for it. I don't know, I just kind of like it. It really makes Skyrim feel very unique. The world of Skyrim is on its own, kind of. Not many things can compare to what it is. And I believe that is also in partial due to the vast, gorgeous mountains that are out there, and the valleys, and all of the scenery within Skyrim, because although it seems like it might be a generic medieval fantasy world, there's calmness within the wild, as would be in real life. Most of the time, these animals that we see in real life and in the games are not out there to try and attack us no matter what, and there are predators that will attack. I'm not saying go out there and go touch random animals, but they're most of the time just as scared of us as we are of them. And I like that because all of the animals in the game just kind of do their own thing. They're not always angry no matter what. I mean, sometimes they can be, but it truly feels like I'm watching a real ecosystem thriving about, and I love that about the game. It makes me feel more immersed into it. So overall, the theme and genre of Skyrim is that of old medieval fantasy, and although that's not a super unique type of genre anymore, with huge types of shows and video games all now being based in fantasy, with like Baldur's Gate 3, new recent rise to Berserk getting more fame, which is making me happy. I love Berserk. It doesn't feel as unique as it really is to people who have not played it, and I understand that, but if we want to talk about a really unique game, let's talk about another example for open world games being Fallout, and how to make it stand out from other open world games. So I'm going to be talking about both Fallout 4 and Fallout New Vegas in this entry, because I believe that the Fallout games are one of the more unique entries on this list. And I personally love the Fallout games, one of my favorite franchises out there, but this is kind of thanks to its distinctive world that it brings. So it kind of starts out with nuclear warfare breaking out, causing the people to rush and find shelter. But where I believe that where Fallout differs from other like apocalypse games is that after the war, the people still hold on to what little that they remember instead of turning into savages like most other people in apocalypse or zombie type games. And this gives Fallout a very distinctive feel to the game, feeling like you're kind of in the 50s or 60s. And now that alone is a unique concept for an apocalypse game, but another factor that shows how unique Fallout is almost the cartoonish way of how radiation works, which that it gives life to new species across the lands. You got, your super mutants, your Deathclaws, your giant irradiated bugs, your feral ghouls, and all that stuff. And it's different from radiation that is portrayed in most of these types of games. It doesn't just kind of kill everything, All the creatures have adapted and evolved to counter the wasteland and survive in it. Now I kind of want to talk about the story aspect of the Fallout games for both Fallout 4 and New Vegas, and why they work so well within the world that they're set in. In Fallout 4, you're on a mission to find your son who's been kidnapped, and after your wife was killed after you were hiding out in the vaults from the nuclear warfare that was going on. And it's a very compelling story that really hooks you in as you make friends and foes alike, partnering up with the factions that have been created in the Wastelands on your journey and the factions that you encounter. And in Fallout New Vegas, you as the courier need to find your would-be killer, kinda, guy and recover a package along the journey, and getting caught up in the main conflict between factions for who owns New Vegas and the Mojave Wasteland. Now the main stories of these games are great, and it's pretty heavily implied that you're supposed to go out and follow these main missions, but what if I, the player, find something in the Wasteland that catches my eye, and unlike some Ubisoft games, Bethesda lets you go there and find stuff, and it most likely will have something for me to do. There might be, a big scary Deathclaw, or a new faction I might meet, or some new characters. And although there are, missions and side quests to do in these games, I don't feel like I'm looking at a checklist and being forced to complete them all. I have some free reign in the Wasteland to do what I want and probably kill anybody I want or talk to anybody I want. And I'm not necessarily punished for having this kind of curiosity and wanting to go out and find what I can and maybe scavenge and explore this world that has been given to me. And thanks to Bethesda's wonderful design of these games, I kind of genuinely feel as if I'm in their world and I'm just kind of simply living in it. This is their own world. And if my character dies, I imagine that the people in the Wasteland will kind of just go on with their daily lives. And that's partially due to the insane amount of personality that they put into these characters. It's one of my favorite aspects of Fallout, and that's what I want to get into next, is talking about character building and what makes a compelling character in an open world game. The characters in the Wasteland, in my opinion, are the biggest component of all of Fallout, and because they all have a very unique feeling to them, and they all have different backstories and lives that they live. And I think that the best example for this is Joshua Graham from Fallout New Vegas. Now, a pretty simple way to describe Joshua would be that he is an ambitious missionary for the Lord who became ruthless and brutal as he was swept up into Caesar's rise of power in the Wasteland. But that doesn't do him enough justice. A simple summary can't justify the characters of Fallout New Vegas because there are also many They're also complex with so many layers to them, just like Joshua. Now, here's a pretty quick disclaimer when I'm going to be talking about Joshua. This does include bits of religion, and I just want to clarify that I myself am not religious. However, I was raised Mormon, and I am in no means going to sit here and try and convert you or give you a sermon. I just kind of want to talk about one of my favorite characters in Fallout New Vegas, and that's about it. So when we first start the game, we get to learn about Joshua and how he's a religious man of Mormon faith. He believes that he is a Mormon missionary, and he's kind of locally known where he's at as the Burn Man. And after talking with him a bit throughout the game and picking some of the right dialogue options, we can learn that Graham used to be part of Caesar's faction and led Caesar's troops into battle, and then suffered defeat at the first battle of the Hoover Dam. Afterward, Caesar wanted to show that failure was unacceptable regardless of your rank, so Caesar had ordered Graham to be executed, having him coated in pitch, lit on fire, and then tossed into the Grand Canyon. However, Graham survived this and left Caesar's legion behind him, and Joshua states that he has been baptized twice, once in water, once in flame, which is undoubtedly, in my opinion, such a hard fucking line of dialogue. And I want to talk more about Joshua's dialogue and how he carefully crafts his words to portray what he's meaning. Now, I don't really want to butcher it, so I'm just going to put the clip in here of what I mean about Joshua's dialogue, so just have a listen to this really quick.
There is much to be skeptical of in this world, so it no longer surprises me to learn how many people don't really believe in anything. What's the point? For many of us, the road is a difficult one, but the path is always there for us to follow, no matter how many times we may fall. The good news is that we can help you find your way back. Naturally, some days are harder than others, but I must try. We all have doubts. The light of the mind alone cannot burn away all darkness. Think on it and look in your heart. It will be for the best. When the walls come tumbling down, when you lose everything you have, you always have family. The fire that had kept me alive was love. Their love. God's love. Right. You're not so certain. Fair enough. We all go through periods of darkness. Of course. In a world filled with misery and uncertainty, it is a great comfort to know that, in the end, there is light in the darkness. In such times we can turn to the Lord, but it's good to have friends. And the good Lord knows there's much to be done here. You're a good neighbor to us. Thank you. Until then, God be with you.
And upon hearing Joshua's backstory, it shows that it hasn't been easy being him, and why he's kind of known as the Burn Man. And talking with Joshua lets us learn a lot more about him. And with the recent clip I just played, also gives us a great insight to Joshua on how, no matter how hard things may be, he always has the Lord to turn to, and he's comforted in that. He's a amazing show and portrayal of a religious figure in a game, and I love Joshua for that. He feels like a truly religious man and not just kind of like some scrapped together stereotype that was just kind of thrown in at the last minute. He has a lot of depth to him as what he is, as no matter how hard the struggle may be, he can always turn to the Lord in times of need. And despite his former allegiance to Caesar's Legion, Joshua does not hold any ill will towards the allies of Caesar's Legion and to the new California Republic as a whole. And I'm just going to call it the NCR for short, but to him, the NCR is still redeemable in his eyes, believing that the greed of man is what led to the Great War, and that only through his faith in God and prayer and genuine acts of kindness and the belief of his religion can humanity hope to prevent history from repeating itself. Now, at the end of Joshua's questline, there's two main options you can go about, and no matter what though, he is seen to be filled with rage, and once he's face to face with Salt Upon Wounds, the war chief of the White Legs and allies to Caesar's Legion and the NCR, he wants to kind of kill him where he stands. He's angry, and you can do this. This is one of the endings. You are allowed to kill Salt Upon Wounds and exterminate the Whitelegs, causing Joshua to go against what he stands for, though, and partially causing him to lose his religion. So the other main ending that you can do, though, is if you can convince Joshua with a high enough speech check to spare Salt Upon Wounds and let nature take its course, then Joshua's faith will be reaffirmed. Even though he was once previously angry, he now has reaffirmed his faith in God, knowing that there's a plan for them, and that the fire inside his heart, it will no longer be burning for hatred and simply just wanting to convert and save as many people as he can. And I believe it shows the duality of Joshua in both of these endings, and how he starts off as the Mormon missionary as you know him, and near the end he can either become the rage-filled kind of lunatic almost, and wanting to kill Salt Upon Wounds for revenge on Caesar, claiming that he wants to play God in this role and bring down the power of God upon Salt Upon Wounds, and the other ending being forgiving to Salt Upon Wounds and not blaming him and kind of letting him be free and do his own thing, and letting nature take its course. God will punish them one day for their acts that they have committed. And when you spare Salt Upon Wounds' life and kind of let nature take its course, letting God do all the work for you, as Joshua states, it has a more rewarding feeling to it. It feels like as if you've changed Joshua's life in a way, kind of letting him not fall into the anger that he was so enveloped by, and letting him change his ways, becoming a better man like that. And that's the thing I love about Fallout New Vegas with that, is that their character design as a whole is amazing. The other factions and all the people and characters that are in this game, such as the New California Republic and the Raiders, and all the other factions are not just there like camps for me to just kind of go in and kill, like how they are in Far Cry, for example, or like random thug appearances in the city like in the Spider-Man games. I feel like I'm giving a genuine purpose, and it shows how it can genuinely impact the story of the game by killing these factions and these people within them. It provides a lot of sustenance, and it makes it feel like your actions have a true effect on this world, and they're not just objectives to complete. And that brings me into another point that I want to talk about, how in most other games it feels like these areas and like camps of people and all that stuff of like thugs and bandits just kind of feel like they're curated for the game to kind of check off and mark off like a checklist, whereas in Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 4 they are not made for the game, they're made for the story, and they have a great impact on it, and that brings so much more love and attention to the game as a whole, and it makes me feel like I'm more part of the story as that. I'm part of the wasteland that is in the Mojave Desert, and I love it. See, the missions for Fallout always just have one main objective goal, and that's it. Whatever leads up to that doesn't matter. Whatever happens in between the beginning and the end of it, it doesn't really matter as long as the end objective is complete. Whereas in games like Spider-Man on the PS4, when you go fight a random game of thugs, you know, it gives you objectives to complete within the fight, and I feel like I'm being kind of like graded on it, and I don't like that feeling. I mean, sometimes when I do a good job in it, I feel great and it makes me happy. I did a good job while beating them up, but it's like I don't want to feel like I'm being graded while playing a video game. I play video games to escape from the reality of the world, and it's a nice, fun kind of like take me out of here, put me in a fantasy world, and let me have fun, and I don't want to feel like I'm being graded on that. So overall, Fallout excels in character design and attention to detail with all of the factions and characters that they write and character development. And another game that does that really well is Red Dead Redemption 2. I personally have not played the game, but I have a friend who has, and I'm going to bring him on. His name is Barry's, and let's get started on Red Dead 2.
You, sir, are a fish.
Red Dead Redemption 2 is a well-revered game known for many things: its world, the story, and its characters. The characters are one of its strong suits, from the Grand Leader of Dutch van der Linde to the rat bastard that is Micah Bell, and many other side characters that have super interesting stories. But this one is about our main character, Arthur Morgan. He's one of the best characters ever written in a video game, in my honest opinion. He's a deeply conflicted character with a tragic backstory. He was born in 1863 to Beatrice and Lyle Morgan. As a child, Beatrice passed away, and at 11, Lyle was arrested for larceny, and later on passed. During 1877, Dutch van der Linde and Hosea Matthews picked up Arthur from the streets as a wild delinquent, and pretty much became the father figure that Arthur never had. Even with a strained relationship with his actual parents, he still keeps a picture of them at camp. When Arthur was 19, he had a son named Isaac with a waitress named Eliza. With Arthur's lifestyle as an outlaw, he could only visit them a few times a month, until one day he showed up to the house with 2 crosses in front of him. They were shot dead during a home robbery. All the robbers could take was $10. During Chapter 2, one of the missions that Arthur had to go on was to collect debts for Leopold Strauss, and one of the places that Strauss sent Arthur is to Thomas Downs' ranch. While collecting the debt from him, Arthur pretty much beat Downs half to death. While doing this, Downs ended up coughing on Arthur. At the time, Arthur and the player didn't know this would be the most important event in the story of Arthur Morgan. After that, we leave the ranch after we find out Thomas doesn't have any of the money. Only a few missions later, we return to the ranch to collect the debt from his family. We find out that Thomas Downs is dead and has died from tuberculosis. This sealed Arthur's fate.
You borrowed money from my business partner, Herr Strauss. You owe him, you took the money. He wants it back, what's not to understand? Where's our money?
I don't have it.
Sell your place.
We already owe more than it's worth.
Then sell your wife, or your family, or something. We ain't your idea of charity. Is that clear?
Thomas!
What are you looking at?
Thomas!
I said what you looking at, woman.
My husband isn't well. If we could just have more...
Like I said, we ain't nobody's idea of charity. Get us the money.
After this mission, the game goes on as usual. Later you move camp and do some missions in Rhodes that ends the chapter by burning down the Braithwaite Manor. After that, the Pinkertons find you, so you have to move camp again to Shady Belle. And during Chapter 4, Arthur has his first noticeable cough while talking to Strauss.
Still working, Mr. Strauss. What you been up to?
Trying to wrap up our accounts before we leave, Mr. Morgan.
So you'll be joining us in Tahiti?
I rather fancied Australia. A similar kind of people to us. Lots of opportunity.
Dutch tells me we're going to be ranchers.
Perhaps, but so far we have not raised many cattle.
No.
So, Mr. Morgan, will you help me finalize our business here?
This is filthy work.
We'll need money in Australia. For cattle and feed, I mean. Why flinch now? You never have done before.
I don't know.
Well, here they are. Some fishermen by the name of Davison, Algie Davison, living in a place called Catfish Jackson near Scarlet Meadows.
A fisherman.
And that's it. We're a union built on that, you know.
Okay.
While in Saint Denis, we do a side mission with Sister Caldron, and during this mission, Arthur has to retrieve a stolen cross from a kid, and after that, he walks past an alley and sees Mrs. Downs working as a prostitute.
You want some company, mister?
No.
You sure?
Hey,
What?
I don't know you. Mrs. Downs?
Oh, no. Not you. Get away.
How?
Now.
I mean, hey.
Help! Help!
Hold on.
This man is bothering
Now-
me. Someone help me. Officer, help!
After that, the story moves on. You rob a bank and that goes terribly wrong. To escape, Arthur and a few other gang members hop up on a boat that leaves for the ocean. While on the boat, it gets caught in a storm and it sinks and you end up in Guarma. While there, you have to help a local militia destroy the island sugar plantations and free the people. When you're done with that, the leader Hercule will give you a boat so you can head back to America. After you get back from Guarma, you have to move camp to Beaver Hollow, and it starts the final chapter. During Chapter 6, you have to go to Sadie Adler to start a mission. While on the way to the mission, Arthur starts to have a coughing fit. It was bad enough that he passed out and fell off his horse. Sometime later, a stranger came by and took him to the doctor. When the doctor checked him out, he confirmed that Arthur has tuberculosis. After that, Arthur had to reflect on himself, on what he wanted to do with his limited time left.
Sure. Thank you. Now, what's wrong? I mean, what appear to be the symptoms?
Well, I think you've heard them. I'm coughing.
Is there any blood?
Sometimes.
Okay, now here. Breathe. Again. Yeah. Let me see your tongue. Now say ah.
What is it?
It's not good news.
Well, I guess that.
You got tuberculosis. Really sorry for you, son. It's a hell of a thing.
What you mean?
You're real sick. It's a progressive disease, and you'll be... Now, the best thing is rest, and getting somewhere warm and dry, and taking it easy. Now, is that possible?
Sure, I can just take my winters in my country club in California. No, it's not possible.
Well, like I said, I'm real sorry.
Yeah, well...
Yeah, wait. Let me get you a little bit more energy today.
Depending on his honor level, the visuals and the dialogue will be different. After the self-reflection and the mission with Sadie, if you're in Ansburg with the highest honor level, a side mission will pop up and it involves Mrs. Downs. At the beginning of the mission, Arthur is talking to Miss Downs about how much he regrets causing the death of Thomas, and how much that has weighed on his mind. He wants to do as much as possible to make their life better for Mrs. Downs and her son, and tries to right his wrongs. The first thing he does is to get her son out of the mine. After he's done with that, her son tells Arthur about one of Mrs. Downs' clients is giving him a bad feeling and tells Arthur to find her before it gets bad. After that, Arthur goes and finds her and threatens the client to leave. When he's done with that, he takes her back to her son, and when they get back, Arthur hands him a couple $100 and tells him to get out of Ansburg and live a better life somewhere else. And this completes Arthur's redemption.
Mrs. Downs,
Go away. Just go away.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, but
Well, you're sorry. Yeah, I heard you.
But, I mean, this country is man unleashed. That's the thing, and it ain't my fault any more than it is anyone
Man
else's.
unleashed? Then unleash goodness. Not just hell's feeble brothers, sir.
But how? I mean, all I know how to do is fight, I guess. I was set free to fight. Where's your son, Mrs. Downs?
Oh, where you think? Down the mine. Until he gets sick. Which won't be long, given how hard they work him. See, foremen don't like him, so he gets the worst of it.
Maybe I could go with...
Well, maybe you could just leave us all alone. Maybe. Maybe you could just go fight some other battle.
Mama! Mama!
Oh, you silly boy. Archie. Oh, we do.
Get out of here. Go. Live someplace else. Start over. Here. Take this. I don't need it no more.
I don't want your money.
Yeah, I know you don't want it.
I don't.
You sure as shit need it. Take it.
No.
I ain't looking for forgiveness. It ain't about that. But don't forgive me. Just take the money and get out of here. Please. I know I ruined your life. I suffer for it every day. But don't let yourself get killed for pride. I seen it kill too many folk. Don't say anything. Don't thank me. Just take the money and pack your bags. That's All I gotta say.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan.
I said don't thank me. Get out of here. Please.
This side mission and everything leading up to it is why I think Arthur is one of the best characters in all of video games. I want to say thanks to Goose for having me on this video. Red Dead 2 is one of my favorite games, and I hope I did pretty well talking about it. I'll hand the mic back off to Goose.
So, Shadow of the Colossus is easily the oldest game on this list by far, and so, because of that, I'm mainly going to be using some of the PS2 version to kind of give you that feel of the oldie game, you know? But I believe that Shadow is currently, and always will be, an amazing, well-crafted game that is heavily under-fucking-rated. Very underrated in my opinion, and that's why I kind of want to include it in this video, because I think it deserves some more attention. And it's got kind of a cult following, but I think it deserves some more attention, So please forgive me if I butcher the pronunciation of his name, but Fumito Ueda, the main man kind of behind Shadow of the Colossus, is infamously known for his insane attention to detail and kind of having that Coraline mindset where like nothing is not intentional, everything has a point to it and everything serves a reason. And just kind of like things about that, in my opinion, that showed off very well is like the ruins of like old buildings, the ruins of old buildings with their inscriptions and all that stuff, and the rings in the desert, and how showing lakes have erosion marks and like the rocks are kind of falling and all that stuff. And even the kind of like dress on the body of the princess that flows each way in the wind as it blows. And I believe this game is a great representation of open world to the observant player. The kind of casual player will not pick it up as well, but this game rewards the observant player well, such as a Souls game does. I believe that the inattentive player of this game does not feel like this would be an open world game, considering the rules and boundaries that we just set for this. But to the observant player, I feel like this is one of the best open world games. It involves a lot of secret hunting and a lot of just general realism that I love to this game. And Shadow is notoriously filled with many, many secrets, such as the glyphs and symbols carved upon the stones that kind of relates to the theory of intersecting points, which was a huge secret within the fan base for a long time, and the 79 gold coins or the 79 steps of enlightenment to help finding and retrieve the Sword of Dorman and other such secrets. I mean, why build a huge map with acres upon acres of land without hiding secrets in them, you know? But for example, in one of the other games they made, Ico has this ridiculously long, almost kind of like a lightsaber fucking sword. You can probably see it right now on the screen, but you have to get it by shooting hoops. I shit you not, you gotta shoot some hoops and ball up to get this fucking sword, and I love it. So Shadow is a game that mainly only lets you kind of keep one weapon and not a lot of variety for your loadout or kind of combat prowess when fighting these Colossi and exploring the open world, unless you beat the time attack modes. And usually this would be a bad thing, that there's like a lack of items and consumables that you can all, you know, use throughout the playthrough to help increase your playtime and help you have a fun playthrough. But I believe that this gives more of an impression of like a truly barren land that has been locked away for a long time, and the only things here that reside are really the Colossus and some animals every now and then, but that's about it. And I mean, they're called the Forbidden Lands for a reason. You're not supposed to be here. Shadow was one of the first games that I played when I was a young boy, and there have been so many times while playing this game and just kind of wandering about in the Forbidden Lands, finding some new beautiful locations with some amazing scenery. And I remember being about, 10 or 11 for the first time playing this and find out that you could climb the main castle and get on the top. So I stopped what I was doing immediately, beat the game at least 2 or 3 more times, I think, and just to be sure that I had enough grip to climb the whole castle. And I didn't know that you could kill the lizards, for more grip, but here I am now, so I know you can do that now. But after climbing this castle and making it to the top, having that sense of wonder of what is up here, why are they hiding it up here, what are they hiding up here, finding this beautiful garden on the top of it, and it made me feel so happy to find a secret in this game. And additionally to that, you can walk across the giant bridge that spans half of the map, the map's distance, to try and exit, but a harsh wind will always blow you back. And with the 79 steps of enlightenment encouraging you to explore the world even more and rewarding you with this desolate, untouched, kind of chamber once you find all 79 of them with the Sword of Dorman in it. And the garden and the bridge were so rewarding to little old me, and the steps of enlightenment were a huge reward, to kind of older me. And it's secrets like this that make Shadow of the Colossus amazing. And like with the garden, it's got some kind of like in the fruit up there that usually would increase your vitality now permanently drains it and brings it lower, kind of giving you a feeling that, hey, you're not supposed to be up here, but you made it up here, so we'll give you something at least, right? But it just felt so good to get up there as a kid, being like, what are they hiding up here? I'm like, what is up here that I'm not supposed to be getting to? And then I remember the first time trying to cross that bridge and be like, oh, I can escape, I can leave. Oh, this is amazing. And then being blown out by wind, which was a little sad to me, but I could still see so much of the world, and I was so excited for it and so happy about it. And it is so good at making you feel like you've uncovered something for the first time, being like a true explorer, like a nomad wandering throughout these forbidden lands, and I love it. Now, although I did say before that Shadow doesn't reward the observant player, and although you have to be quite observant and may look a little too deep into some things, it rewards you greatly, and it always feels as if you were a traveler who is first to unearth this relic, or this kind of sword, or new types of arrows, or a harpoon, or whatever it may be, for the first time in like ages. It truly makes you feel like a stranger to these forbidden lands, and the very little amount of dialogue that's in the game kind of adds to this. With that little dialogue that there is, there's not much of a backstory ever mentioned, but it's more of just motivation for your character Wander to continue his quest. Just go revive this princess. You have a chance at doing this, so don't fuck it up and just go do that. Don't worry about anything else, maybe about these weird black spirits that are shooting into your body after you kill every Colossus. Just worry about the princess and focus on her. Now, another aspect of Shadow of the Colossus that I really want to talk about is the clever boss design in this game. And I know most people would kind of sum it up to a gimmick for every boss, because, I mean, they're kind of right. But the gimmicks for, all of these bosses in Shadow are very unique. And although they're all beaten the same way of stabbing the weak point, they all have a very unique ways of, getting to that weak point in order to, access it. And it's not just kind of like a hack and slash, it's using your environment and the Colossus itself to your advantage, Within that, I kind of remember, being a young boy and not really knowing about YouTube tutorials at the time, so I would get frustrated a lot at not learning how to defeat the boss eventually. Some examples I could remember were probably Avion, and I believe, the bird, Avion, because it was so weird having to get onto something that was flying, and that was very hard for me. I believe another one was probably, I think it was like Pelagaya. It's the weird, like, horse thing in the ocean where you have to get it to like lift up its stomach so you can go stab the stomach, and that is really, that was hard for me as a boy. But I do remember that it made me feel great. I felt amazing the second I found out how to beat the boss, and I felt rewarded, like I had earned it by thinking outside the box on how to counter these bosses. And I love that in this game. The bosses are all great, in my opinion. And another thing I want to talk about in Shadow that I love is the subversion of expectations. You're meant to go kill all these colossi because it can bring the princess of your village back to life, and that's great, and you want to be able to go do it. And it's assumed that these colossus are evil, but throughout the game, every time you beat one, you'll get the weird black spirit that will shoot into you and then bind with you. And you're kind of wondering, what are these colossus doing? They might not really be that evil. They seem like normal animals, kind of in that sense that they're not always evil. They're just trying to protect themselves. Why are you going out of your way to kill them when they haven't done no harm to you? I mean, some of them do, like Celosia, but not all of them are going out of their way to explicitly harm you. Maybe you're not necessarily the good guy here by killing these century-old creatures that are, in these forbidden lands that are a huge part to the forbidden lands, of course, and maybe you're not supposed to be doing that, but you think that you're doing the greater good because it brings a human back to life. But what if these colossus' lives are of more importance, than the humans? And this was the game that kind of made me realize when I was younger that not all stories are just black and white. There's no just good and evil. There's complex themes to these things. It kind of awoke in me. It's like everyone thinks that these colossus are villains and they're scary, but what if they're not? What if they just put that label on them to keep you out of these lands? What if they're just free roaming animals doing their own thing? It's not really fair to them, in my opinion. It's like, these are just animals, just let them be. They're not hurting you, they're not going out of their way to do so unless you threaten them, and if they feel threatened, they will retaliate by protecting themselves. And that's the one thing I love about this game, is it made me realize that. Now, the Colossus in the game, although they're like kind of like, you know, big and scary monsters, they're also pretty beautiful. And they're all very unique, except for Valis, Barba, and Argus, in my opinion, because they're all pretty much the exact same thing, but with, you know, different movesets and a different way of beating them. But besides that little side tangent, they all feel like real-life monuments, you know, that have been brought to life, and, you know, they've been given a mission to stop the main character, which is Wander, you, the player, but with their rock-like structures on them and the fur on them, it makes them feel like they were once statues, especially Malice, because he quite literally looks like a building, but their lumbering movements kind of make it feel like they've been given life for the first time in, like, eons, who knows how long. But, however, some of these, you know, Colossus are much faster and give more of an animalistic feel to them, but they're kind of clumsy and they tend to run into buildings and structures quite often, and if you pay close enough attention, some of them have runes or symbols that are carved on them, and it shows that they, you know, kind of carry some history to them. They're not just mindless animals. They got a little bit of, you know, stuff to them. They're not just here for the player. They're there for a bigger purpose. Now, I love Shadow of the Colossus, one of the first video games I ever played as a wee young boy, kind of, you know, introducing me to what video games were and what good storytelling was, and I think everything about this game is perfect besides, you know, the camera. The goddamn camera sucks. It is absolutely awful, but besides that, it is a perfect game. And, you know, I think it's beautiful, and it's a world that encourages the player to explore and find these Colossus to bring back the princess to life. And all the while, the player is wondering if you're truly doing the right thing. There's also, like, you know, many little mysteries and strange aspects to this game. Wander is a different archetype of, like, you know, your usual medieval to kind of fantasy world knight, or, like, fantasy main character. We don't know anything about his background or his history, but it's kind of assumed he's maybe a knight, or a kind of adventurer of some sorts, maybe. And he's doing some strange things, such as standing on his horse or grabbing onto literally everything, though, and wearing very little armor. He's kind of not really a knight, as you see, and he's not nearly as big or tough as the normal knight stereotype, but he's unable to do any, you know, serious damage with his weapons, except for when he reaches weak points, and by all rights, in my opinion, he's a little different, so he should not be winning these logically. You know, he just doesn't fight as like a normal kind of character would. He will, as I said earlier, stand on his horse and do very kind of outside the box kind of fighting style, and it's very unique. But even then, he doesn't seem like he's properly trained. But so he's just doing what he thinks would work and what he thinks is effective and what might, you know, bring this thing down. So I just think it's very interesting and not very much often talk about aspect of the game. And I know it's a very small aspect of the game, but I appreciate it very much. And it kind of shows that Wander's not, you know, his actions are not that of like a hardened knight or a warrior or someone with an end goal. Although he knows he must save the princess, he has an end goal, but his behavior is similar to that of someone who's easily distracted. He has kind of like a natural curiosity of like a child almost, you know? Similar to that of like Sasaki Kojiro, for all of my Vagabond fans out there. But, you know, anyways, I think it's a small thing, and I might be looking a little too deep into it, but you know, I feel like Fumito Ueda, the creator of it, was trying to have Wander mirror the player in a way, and making him seem easily distracted and curious to explore, while still having that goal in mind. The player is curious, just as Wander is, and doesn't use normal battle tactics and thinks of what is most useful in the situation instead of basics of fighting. And although these tactics may be strange and hard to pull off, they help put down each Colossus, so it helps the player feel rewarded for their curiosity, almost like a child again, you know, just like Wander. You are a wanderer and you're learning how to fight and save your princess. And I mean, I love Shadow of the Colossus. I've said all I really can say about the game, and there's probably more, but I just haven't thought about it, don't know about it. Anyways, I love the game. I think it's great, and it's a highly recommended game for anybody who hasn't played it. It is a PlayStation exclusive, sadly, but if you have PlayStation, you haven't played this game, go give it a go. It's very fun. Well, I hope all of you liked the video. This was a long one in the process of working on. I mean, it's almost about an hour long, so it took a lot of time out of me, but I really wanted to talk about it. It's one of my favorite kind of topics in general as a whole is, you know, open world games. They're very fun to play, And although there have been some poor examples and not, the best of games out there that are open world, there are still always, there's a little gold in there every now and then that's always great. And I love these games. They're just some of my favorites. So, I hope you had fun watching, and leave a like if you liked it. If you want to, consider subscribing. I would love it. Well, I hope you guys appreciated having Barry's on. I'm Goose and he's Barry's, so we both kind of make up each part of the channel here. So, well, yeah, that's about it. I'll try to get a new video out soon, as fast as I can, but still busy with college and all that stuff. So, I guess I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a good one. Be good people.